Hello, today I'm going to talk about Althorp in Northamptonshire, which is probably best known as the childhood home of Diana, Princess of Wales. It's the ancestral home of the Earls Spencer. There have actually been two beautiful Diana Spencers in the family. The first one in the 1700s very nearly married the Prince of Wales, and the second one in 1981 actually did. Today it's the home of the 9th Earl, who was the younger brother of Diana, Prince of Wales. Diana wasn't born here, she was born at Park House, which is in Sandringham, and she moved to this house when she was 14, which is when her father inherited the title and the estate. I absolutely love Althorp. When you drive through the gates, you feel that you're entering this rarefied world apart. You're surrounded by 13,000 acres of estate, and the house is at the centre as the beating heart of the estate. The house was built in 1508. It's got 90 rooms and it's surrounded by a 500-acre park. It was built by the Spencers for the Spencers, and that's how it has remained for 500 years. Many of our aristocratic families have had a gambler or a spendthrift who, through their tenure, has managed to squander much of the family's wealth. The Spencers have avoided that, and they've also managed to weather the storms of death duties and slumps in agricultural income. The house is really a red brick Tudor house in drag. Think Hampton Court Palace or St James's Palace. By the 1700s, red brick was really unfashionable. Nobody wanted to have a red brick house. So the Spencers clad the house with limestone tiles that were attached to a wooden frame. They're actually called mathematical tiles. The source of the wealth that built the house originally was sheep farming. The Spencer family were really good at sheep farming, but during the 1700s the family absolutely shot to the top of the rich list. And here the story really revolves around Blenheim Palace and the first Duke of Marlborough. When the Duke died, the Duke of Marlborough died in 1722, he did not leave a living male heir. In recognition of just how much he was a national hero, there was an Act of Parliament which allowed for the title and the estate, the Duke of Marlborough title and the Blenheim estate, to pass down the female line. So the Duke's eldest daughter Henrietta inherited. Now when Henrietta died, I hope you're keeping up, when Henrietta died she left no living children, and so the line passed to her sister Anne. Anne was married to the Earl of Sunderland, and guess what? She lived at Althorp. Her eldest son, Charles, inherited the title, the Duke of Marlborough, and the Blenheim estate, and her second son, John, inherited Althorp. And it's from John that the current Earl Spencer is directly descended. Now the story gets more exciting because Sarah, the Duchess of Marlborough, the widow of the Duke, very much favoured her younger grandson over the older one. So when she died, her enormous wealth, she'd accumulated something like 30 estates during her life, these were left, along with the Marlborough plate, was left to the younger son, John, rather than the older one, Charles. And so it all came to Althorp rather than Blenheim. When you visit Althorp, you see the most fabulous collection of paintings on the wall. So you see Van Dyck's, you see Rubens, you see Gainsborough's, you see Rembrandt's. In more recent years, so in the 19th century and the 20th century, the family commissioned portraits by the likes of John Singer Sargent, John Singleton Copley, Augustus John. There's wonderful tapestry. You'll see the parts of the Marlborough plate collection, and so you get these fabulous, massive pilgrim flasks and wine cisterns, which the first Duke of Marlborough had collected, and he took them with him on his military campaigns during the War of Spanish Succession. There's also in the jewellery collection at Althorp the Spencer tiara. This is the one that Diana Spencer wore when she married Prince Charles in 1981. There's lovely Sèvres porcelain. Particularly of note is a chocolate service which had belonged to Marie Antoinette. and there's also a really exquisite Meissen fruit bowl, which is just lovely. There's a wooden inlaid cabinet from the 18th century, which was a gift from the first Earl to his wife. Theirs was a blissfully happy marriage, and on this lovely piece of furniture, which you'll find in the south drawing room at Althorp, you see his and her initials surrounded by the initials of their 3 surviving children, along with a love message to the Countess. This couple actually got married in secret at Althorp because his parents didn't entirely approve of the union. They got married in one of the bedrooms at Althorp. One of the children, one of the 3 children whose initials appear on this piece of furniture, was Georgiana, and when she grew up she married the Duke of Devonshire, the 5th Duke of Devonshire, and she went off to be the chatelaine at Chatsworth, and I've actually talked about her in an earlier vlog. In recent years, the current Earl has shaken up the collection by acquiring works of art, including 2 massive paintings by Mitch Griffiths. One of these is entitled Britannia. It shows a young woman, the model for the woman was actually Ray Winston, the actor's daughter, wearing a very raunchy miniskirt and high heels, smoking a cigarette, and she's surrounded by objects of modern materialism. And this painting, she's standing there with this very sort of come hither look, this painting hangs in the picture gallery at Althorp. So you're walking down the gallery, you're passing all these 17th century portraits by Sir Peter Lely of the most beautiful women at the court of Charles II. Many of them were mistresses of King Charles II, and then suddenly you're stopped in your tracks because you come across this very modern take on the portrait by Mitch Griffiths. Now, what would I take from the collection if I could just have one thing? Well, I think the answer is a portrait, but it's a very unusual portrait. It is of Sarah, the first Duchess of Marlborough, who was famously tempestuous, passionate, probably quite tricky. On one occasion, she had a particularly angry exchange with her husband, the first Duke, at the end of which she cut her hair off in a fit of pique and a fit of fury because she knew that her husband absolutely loved her hair. And she ran to find the portrait painter Godfrey Kneller, who must have been in the house at the time, and asked him to paint her as a record of just how unhappy the Duke had made her at that time. So it's a very unusual portrait because it shows the real personality of the sitter, which certainly for a 17th century portrait was a rare thing. The story continues because, unbeknown to Sarah, her husband had actually gathered up her hair from the floor. Decades later, when he died and the Duchess opened the trunk containing his most personal treasured possessions, she found her hair. He'd kept it for the rest of his life. So I love this painting because it's a rare insight into the personality of the sitter, and I also like it because it's at Althorp and it really reinforces this link between these 2 great houses and reminds us that the bedrock for this fabulous collection at Althorp was the wealth of the Sarah, the Duchess of Marlborough. Thank you very much for listening.